The pale glow of the full moon cast long shadows over the sprawling metropolis of Cairo. From his balcony, Dr. Elijah Cade, a geneticist with a knack for unraveling ancient mysteries, sipped his tea as he skimmed through a peculiar email. It wasn't every day that someone claimed to have found an anomaly in ancient Egyptian mummies' DNA, especially one that didn't seem human. The sender was an anonymous figure going by the alias Aru, an allusion to the field of reeds, the ancient Egyptian afterlife. The email contained a single attachment, a blurry image of hieroglyphs alongside a strand of code that seemed far too complex for any civilization thousands of years old to have understood. Yet, it was undeniably written in DNA sequences. Beneath the image was a cryptic message. The key lies not in what you see, but in what you feel. The blood of kings holds the map to the stars. If you seek truth, meet me at the oasis of Fayum tomorrow at midnight. Elijah's rational mind warred with his curiosity. He'd made a career out of dissecting claims of pseudo-history and debunking wild theories. Yet something about this message unsettled him. It wasn't just the eerie precision of the genetic sequence. It was the undeniable feeling that this wasn't a hoax. By the time the clock struck midnight the following night, Elijah found himself beneath the vast desert sky at Fayum. A single figure, cloaked in black, emerged from the shadows. They didn't speak at first, merely handed Elijah a small vial containing a scarlet liquid. "What is this?" Elijah demanded. "The blood of Akhenaten," the figure said, their voice a raspy whisper. "Analyze it, Dr. Cade. Your answers are in there. And remember, this discovery must remain secret. If the wrong people find out, they'll destroy everything." Before Elijah could press further, the figure vanished into the desert night, leaving him with more questions than answers. Back in his laboratory, Elijah worked tirelessly to sequence the DNA. As the results unfolded on his screen, his heart raced. The genome was unlike anything he had ever seen. It shared basic human characteristics, yet entire segments were composed of sequences he couldn't identify. It was as if the DNA had been augmented with something extraterrestrial. Among the irregularities, one sequence stood out, repeating pattern of 4 nucleotides that seemed to mimic a binary code. Elijah translated it into a numeric sequence, which revealed a set of coordinates. His fingers hovered over his keyboard, trembling. The coordinates pointed to a location in Giza, perilously close to the Great Pyramid. By sunrise, Elijah stood at the edge of the Giza Plateau. He had brought a ground-penetrating radar device, an indulgence for his occasional field experiments. He doubted anything would come of it, but the sequence haunted him, urging him onward. The radar revealed an anomaly beneath the sands, a massive chamber buried deep below the pyramid. It was an architectural impossibility. No records or scans had ever suggested such a structure existed. Elijah's breath quickened. Whatever lay beneath had been hidden deliberately, perhaps for thousands of years. As he stared at the radar's readout, a low rumble broke the silence. The ground beneath his feet shifted, and sand cascaded into a circular sinkhole. Scrambling to safety, Elijah peered over the edge and saw a staircase descending into darkness. He hesitated only for a moment before descending into the abyss. The air grew colder with each step, and an otherworldly hum resonated through the walls. The staircase ended abruptly at an enormous metallic door, covered in hieroglyphs that seemed to pulsate with a faint blue light. At the center of the door was a hand-shaped depression, surrounded by concentric rings etched with ancient symbols. Elijah instinctively reached for the vial of Akhenaten's blood in his pocket. Could it be the key? He extracted a small sample and carefully poured it into the hand-shaped depression. The symbols flared to life, spinning rapidly before the door slid open with a hiss. The chamber beyond defied comprehension. Walls of shimmering metal reflected shifting constellations, while a colossal structure resembling a spacecraft loomed at the center. Elijah approached cautiously, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Strange inscriptions lined the craft's surface, glowing faintly as he neared. One symbol matched the genetic sequence from the mummy's DNA. As Elijah placed his hand on the symbol, A surge of energy coursed through him. The spacecraft hummed to life, its interior illuminated by a web of glowing lines that converged at a central console. A voice, calm yet otherworldly, echoed in his mind. "Welcome, descendant. You carry the legacy of the stars." Before Elijah could respond, the spacecraft projected a holographic map of the galaxy, highlighting a distant star system. The voice continued. "This is our origin. Your people were chosen to protect the gateway, but the knowledge has been lost. The bloodline must awaken the ship and fulfill its purpose." Elijah's mind raced. Was this proof that ancient Egyptian royalty had been genetically engineered by an alien civilization? If so, what was the purpose the voice spoke of? And why had this knowledge been hidden for so long? Suddenly, the chamber shook violently. An explosion echoed from above, and the hologram flickered. Voices shouted in the distance, armed men closing in fast. Elijah realized with a sinking feeling that he wasn't the only one who had been tracking the anomaly. The spacecraft's voice interrupted his thoughts. "The ship is compromised. Secure the key and escape." A compartment opened in the console, revealing a crystalline object pulsating with light. Elijah grabbed it and sprinted toward the staircase as gunfire erupted behind him. He barely escaped the chamber before the entrance collapsed, sealing the spacecraft once more. Gasping for breath under the desert sun, Elijah clutched the crystal tightly. His mind swirled with unanswered questions, but one thing was clear. The secret of Akhenaten's bloodline and the alien ship was far more dangerous than he'd imagined. He had the key to unlock humanity's greatest mystery. But at what cost? Elijah's hands trembled as he examined the crystalline object under the dim light of his study. It pulsed faintly, as if alive, each beat sending a shiver down his spine. He knew it was more than just an artifact. It was a conduit, a piece of technology far beyond human understanding. The ringing of his phone shattered the silence. Elijah hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A familiar voice greeted him, laced with urgency. It was Professor Amina Rashid, an archaeologist and an old colleague. "Elijah, you're in danger. I've been hearing whispers about a secret excavation near Giza, something involving extraterrestrial technology. They're calling it the Stellar Gate. Whatever you found, there are people willing to kill for it." Elijah's breath caught. "How do you know this?" "Let's just say I've seen things recently, things I can't explain. Meet me at the library in the Coptic district tonight. We need to talk." Before he could respond, the line went dead. They found temporary refuge in an abandoned building. As they caught their breath, Amina turned to Elijah. "We need to leave the city. There's a monastery in the Sinai Desert, St. Catherine's. The monks there are said to be keepers of ancient secrets. If anyone can help us, it's them." Elijah nodded, the weight of the crystal pressing against him. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The answers they sought lay far beyond the sands of Egypt. Elijah and Amina departed Cairo under the cover of darkness, traveling in an inconspicuous old jeep. The road stretched endlessly through the desert, the headlights casting long, ghostly shadows. They spoke little, the gravity of their situation pressing down on them. In the silence, Elijah's mind turned over the revelations of the past few days. The Stellar Gate, Akhenaten's bloodline, the alien technology. Each piece seemed to be part of a puzzle too vast to comprehend. The first sign of St. Catherine's Monastery was the faint glow of lanterns flickering against the rugged cliffs of Mount Sinai. By dawn, they reached the ancient stone walls, where robed monks greeted them with a mix of curiosity and wariness. Amina spoke hurriedly in Arabic, explaining their purpose. The monks exchanged glances before ushering them into the monastery. The interior of the monastery was a labyrinth of cool stone hallways, filled with the scent of incense and the quiet hum of chanting. They were led to an underground chamber lit by candles. The walls were adorned with ancient manuscripts and symbols that bore a striking resemblance to the markings on the crystal. The abbot, a frail but sharp-eyed man named Father Macarius, examined the crystal with trembling hands. "This," he whispered, "is a fragment of the path of Ra. It is said to hold the power to awaken the gate." Elijah leaned forward. What is the gate's purpose? Why was it hidden? Father Macarius sighed. The gate is not merely a bridge between worlds. It is also a weapon. In the wrong hands, it could bring devastation unlike anything humanity has ever known. The pharaohs understood this and swore to protect it, even if it meant erasing it from history. Amina interjected, but the knowledge wasn't erased entirely. Someone out there knows about it, and they're hunting us. The abbot nodded gravely. If they seek the gate, they will stop at nothing. You must protect the fragment. There is a sanctuary deeper within the mountain, a place where the fragment can be hidden and guarded. But it is not without its trials. Elijah and Amina followed Father Macarius through a concealed passageway that led into the heart of the mountain. The air grew colder, and the path narrowed until they reached a vast cavern. At its center stood an ancient altar, surrounded by intricate carvings that glowed faintly as they approached. This is the chamber of the veil, the abbot explained. To secure the fragment, one must face the visions of truth. The artifact will test your worthiness. Elijah exchanged a nervous glance with Amina. What kind of test? The abbot stepped back. That only the artifact can reveal. As Elijah placed the crystal on the altar, the cavern filled with a blinding light. Images began to swirl around him. Scenes of ancient Egypt, the construction of the pyramids, and the arrival of beings not of this earth. He saw Akhenaten standing before the stellar gate, his face a mixture of awe and fear. Then the vision shifted to chaos, wars, destruction, and the gate falling into shadow. A voice echoed in Elijah's mind. The choice is yours, descendant. Will you safeguard the key, or unleash the stars upon your world? The light faded, and Elijah collapsed to his knees, gasping. He turned to Amina, who knelt beside him, her face pale. Did you see it too? She nodded. The burden of this knowledge, it's overwhelming. Father Macarius stepped forward. You have been shown the truth. Now you must decide. Will you leave the fragment here, or continue your journey? Elijah stared at the crystal, its faint glow seeming to pulse in time with his heartbeat. The weight of his decision pressed down on him, heavier than ever. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but the choice was clear. We continue, he said firmly. If this knowledge can save humanity, we can't bury it. The abbot nodded solemnly. Then may the stars guide you. As Elijah and Amina prepared to leave the monastery, the sound of distant engines echoed through the valley. They exchanged a look of dread. Whoever was hunting them had found their trail. The race to unlock the secrets of the stellar gate had just begun. Elijah and Amina didn't wait to see who the intruders were. The moment the distant hum of engines reached their ears, they sprang into action, gathering their belongings and heading toward a hidden exit Father Macarius had shown them earlier. This way, Amina urged, clutching a rolled-up map the abbot had given them. It marked a treacherous path through the mountains that would lead them to a remote village. We need to stay ahead of them. The night air was bitterly cold as they descended the rocky terrain. Their flashlights cast erratic beams, illuminating jagged rocks and narrow passages. Behind them, the faint glow of the monastery grew smaller until it disappeared entirely. Hours later, the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. Exhausted but resolute, they reached a plateau overlooking a vast desert expanse. Amina unfolded the map, her brow furrowed. According to this, there's a valley up ahead where we can find shelter. But we'll need to move quickly. The map mentioned something about unstable ground. Elijah gave her a questioning look. Unstable how? Amina shrugged. I don't know, but if the monks knew about it, it's probably true. Let's keep moving. They were halfway through the valley when the ground beneath them began to vibrate. A deep rumbling sound followed, and the sand seemed to ripple like water. Elijah's heart leaped into his throat. Run! He shouted, grabbing Amina's hand. The two of them sprinted across the shifting sands as the rumbling grew louder. Behind them, a section of the valley floor collapsed, revealing a cavernous void beneath. Elijah didn't dare look back. He focused on putting one foot in front of the other, pulling Amina along. They reached solid ground just as the collapse spread to where they had been moments earlier. Panting, Elijah looked back at the newly formed chasm. What was that? Amina shook her head, wide-eyed. I don't know, but I think we just found another buried secret. Curiosity got the better of them. After catching their breath, they peered over the edge of the chasm. Deep below, faint blue lights flickered, reminiscent of the glow they had seen in the chamber of the veil. We have to go down there, Elijah said, his voice tinged with excitement. Are you insane? Amina shot back. We barely escaped with our lives. I know, but think about it. What if this is connected to the Stellar Gate? What if this is another piece of the puzzle? Amina hesitated but finally relented. Fine, but if we're doing this, we need to be careful. Using ropes from their packs, they began their descent into the chasm. The deeper they went, the more the glowing blue lights intensified, casting an eerie luminescence on the cavern walls. Strange symbols were etched into the rock, similar to the markings on the crystal and the spacecraft. When they reached the bottom, they found themselves standing before a massive door embedded in the rock. Unlike the one at Giza, this door was cracked open as if someone or something had been there before them. Elijah and Amina exchanged uneasy glances. Looks like we're not the first ones here, Elijah murmured. They stepped through the opening and into another vast chamber. At its center was a pedestal, atop which rested an object that glowed with an intense, otherworldly light. Surrounding the pedestal were strange machines, their purpose unfathomable. As Elijah approached the pedestal, a voice filled the chamber. It wasn't the calm, guiding voice from the spacecraft. It was harsher, almost mechanical. Unauthorized access detected. State your purpose or face termination. Elijah froze. Amina whispered urgently, What do we do? Thinking quickly, Elijah pulled out the crystal and held it up. The machines whirred to life, scanning the artifact. After a tense moment, the voice spoke again. Artifact recognized. Access granted to designated descendant. The machines powered down, and the glow of the object on the pedestal dimmed slightly. Elijah reached out and picked it up, a second fragment, similar to the crystal he already carried but etched with different symbols. Before he could examine it further, the sound of footsteps echoed from the chamber entrance. Armed figures emerged, their weapons trained on Elijah and Amina. At their head was a man in a black suit, his expression cold and calculating. Well, Dr. Cade, the man said, his voice dripping with menace. You've led us to quite the discovery. Hand over the artifacts, and no one has to get hurt. Elijah's mind raced as he gripped both crystals, their combined energy pulsing through his body. The man in the black suit took a step forward, his shoes clicking against the ancient floor. I am Director Marcus Chen of the Stellar Research Division, he announced. We've been tracking alien artifacts for decades. Did you really think you were the first to discover this? Then you know what's at stake, Elijah replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. These aren't weapons to be exploited. They're keys to understanding our true origins. Chen laughed coldly. Understanding? We're far beyond that, Dr. Cade. We've already decoded much of the alien technology. What we need now is control. Amina stepped forward. You're wrong. The visions at St. Catherine's showed us the truth. The gate wasn't meant for control. It was meant for connection. As they spoke, Elijah felt the crystals growing warmer. Their light began to pulse and sync, creating patterns that danced across the chamber walls. The ancient machines around them hummed to life, responding to the crystal's energy. The bloodline awakens, the mechanical voice announced. Initiating final protocol. The chamber shook violently. Sections of the wall slid apart, revealing a massive circular structure that had been hidden within the rock itself. It was another gate, larger than the one at Giza, its surface covered in flowing symbols that matched those on both crystals. Chen's men raised their weapons, but before they could fire, a burst of energy from the gate knocked them off their feet. Chen himself staggered backward, shielding his eyes from the intensifying light. The gate is activating, Amina shouted over the growing rumble. Elijah, what's happening? Elijah felt a familiar presence in his mind, the calm voice from the spacecraft. The time has come, it said. The gates are aligned. You must choose. Seal the pathway forever, or open the bridge between worlds. Images flooded Elijah's consciousness. The ancient Egyptians working alongside beings from another world, sharing knowledge and building wonders. He saw the moment they decided to hide the truth. Fearing humanity wasn't ready. He saw the future too, countless possibilities branching out from this very moment. "Shoot them," Chen commanded, struggling to his feet. "We can't let them." But his words were cut short as both crystals lifted from Elijah's hands, floating toward the gate. The chamber filled with blinding light as they locked into place within the ancient mechanism. Elijah knew what he had to do. He reached out, placing one hand on each crystal, embracing his role as a descendant of those who had come before. The gate's energy surged through him, and in that moment, he understood everything. "We're not meant to control the gate," he announced, his voice resonating with power. "We're meant to learn from it, to grow, to understand our place in the universe." The gate's light intensified, creating a portal that showed glimpses of another world, a place of impossible beauty and advanced civilization. But instead of opening fully, the gate began to reconfigure itself. "What are you doing?" Chen demanded. "What the ancients intended," Elijah replied. "The gate will remain, but it will only open when humanity is truly ready, when we've learned to use knowledge for wisdom rather than power." The crystals pulsed one final time before embedding themselves permanently within the gate structure. The portal shimmered and faded, leaving behind a dormant mechanism that hummed with potential rather than immediate power. Chen lunged forward, but the ground beneath him shifted. The chamber began to seal itself, ancient machinery working to protect its secrets once more. "You're making a mistake," he shouted as his men retreated from the collapsing entrance. "This power belongs to us." "No," Amina said firmly, standing beside Elijah. "It belongs to the future." They watched as Chun and his men fled the chamber, forced out by the collapsing passageways. When the dust settled, the gate stood silent, its surface now marked with new symbols, a message for future generations. Elijah turned to Amina, exhausted but at peace. "The blood of kings never held the power they thought," he said quietly. "It held something far more important, the responsibility to protect and prepare." "So what now?" Amina asked, surveying the transformed chamber. Now Elijah smiled. "We do what scholars do best. We study, we learn, and we make sure that when humanity finally reaches for the stars, we do it not out of greed or fear, but out of wisdom and hope." As they made their way back to the surface, the first rays of dawn broke over the desert horizon. The mystery of the stellar gate had been solved, but an even greater journey was just beginning. Somewhere out there, their celestial ancestors were waiting, patient and eternal, for the day when humanity would finally be ready to join them among the stars.